skiza flow na conversation, essentially speaking.
What up? Noel here. This is another episode of Essentially Speaking, Season 3. And if you've never watched what we do, we speak about culture, apologetics, theology, and a bit of music. Speaking of music, we have a musical legend in the building. The triple OG.
Triple OG.
OG triple. We have Benjamin Webi, aka Webi, in the joining us for the pod today, man. It's good to see you.
Good to see you, homie. As
Karibu
always.
sana. I only
Asante.
ever see this guy on stage.
Wow.
In the last couple of years, we've done some productions together.
Yes.
But it's good for my people to know where the inspiration comes from.
Mm-hmm.
So I've listened to Webi a while, even before I was a musician. And a lot of how I shape my musical, what's the word?
Your
Whatever the
creative
word is,
expression.
has been influenced by people like him. So
Wow, that's amazing to know, man.
earlier on, I used to try and find
Influence, yeah.
is there an artist I can model myself after? You're one of them, definitely.
Appreciate that. Wow, that's a tall one to wear, man. Thank you. It
No, it's
humbles
true,
me,
and you know the youngins on my channel don't know. They just think,
Wow.
just think we popped up.
Like mushroom.
Tumefunga too. It always comes from somewhere. So asante
Yeah.
for giving us the time, man.
Nah, listen, this was definitely a yes for me. Like, I didn't need to think about this. And it's always nice to chop it up with you. So thank you for having me on Essentially Speaking.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. By the way, he has a pod as well. Soulfire Inspiration.
Yes.
Check it out as well. But
Yeah.
to unplug.
Shameless, yeah.
I think I remember the first, well, maybe not the instance, but I remember the first song I heard from you on radio.
Right.
And hey, it was so refined. I thought it was a group. Like,
I got that quite a bit.
yeah, I thought you were a group because
Yeah.
like the harmonies were so refined. I was like, which group is this? And that time, like, used to be played in those sections where, you know, it's not like, hey, and that was Noel Nderitu.
Yeah.
Like, they'll just play a song and then play another one. So you never know
who
who
yeah,
the
just
guy is.
glides out, in and out.
Yeah, but I
Yeah.
guess maybe we can start on what your beginnings were. At least what the spark was for, hey, you know, actually, I think I can record music. Like,
Yeah.
I've been dabbling with this, maybe playing guitar here and there, but what was the thing for, okay, let's record?
Actually, that story goes way back. In fact, and I think it starts somewhere in 97. It
Bro.
starts in 97 because that year, I remember that's the year I was introduced for the first time to the Boyz II Men sound. I mean, they'd been there for a while, but then they had released this album, I think it's called Evolution. And I listened to these guys and I was like, wow. Whatever it is that I do,
Yeah.
because I was already interested in making music and putting it out there. But this was not the influence for this is how I want it to sound.
Right.
I think I like the idea behind harmonies and storytelling. And, you know, I don't imagine that everything they're singing about happened to them. So however it is that they think to be able to create and express like that, I want to reflect that in my music. So that's really where it began. But then now I finally got the chance to do that practically.
Yeah.
Somewhere in 2003. But that's pretty much where the journey began because I met a bunch of guys who were recording an album at the time and they were a group and they were a reminder of that Boyz II Men influence that I first interacted with.
This is a Kenyan group?
This is a Kenyan group. They're called the Votaries.
I remember the Votaries.
The Votaries. Hey, one of them was a producer. Well, he still is, Ben Gates. Shout out Ben Gates. And he was producing they were producing their album at Soul Child Records, which is owned by Steve Ominde.
Okay.
So I'd gotten to meet Ben Gates and he invited me to come check out the studio. And from that time, I just kept going back there to hang out. And as they were recording their music, I'd always hang out with them and listen. And I was like, you know, now from a Kenyan perspective, I think I see how I can also sort of segue. But at this point, I didn't even know if I'd even get the chance to record there.
Right.
Until Steve Ominde, it's like he pulled me aside one time and just told me, looks like you're really interested in this thing, that you like it. And if you want to record music, you're welcome to do it here. That's where now the journey really began. And at this point, I'd already been writing quite a bit of songs and you know, my vision was at least have a few that you can start with whenever the opportunity pops up. You know,
also, you're already writing.
Yeah, I'd already been writing in the background. You know, again, because these guys had been making such great music. I thought, what would I sound like if I was making music of my own?
Right.
So I'd started doing it.
Okay.
So by the time this opportunity came to start, I had at least at least 5 songs down.
Right,
So we
right.
got to work immediately.
Okay.
And one of those songs was Outside My Window, which eventually became the title for the first album.
Yeah. And that's the song I was referencing, actually.
Yeah. That song has 2 versions on the album. There's one which features the Votaries. They graciously agreed to be a feature on the record. And then now Gates was like, what would this sound like if we decided to reimagine it? It wasn't even so much a remix. It was more like, let's reimagine how it would be like, but now just with you. So no additional vocalists.
So is
just
that the one
you.
that went on radio?
That's the one that went on radio
Right.
and became the identity single.
Right.
That's the one you heard. That's the one, Christian radio picked up. Because again, that time, mainstream was frowning a little bit at playing music from unknown gospel artists. And especially for me, who decided to sound different from everyone else. Because I was the guy who sounded like a non-Kenyan. And then there were no videos. So there's no...
This is the era for no music videos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You didn't have to have a video for the song to be big. It just needed to be played on mainstream radio. And as long as there's some traction over there, it opens doors.
Right.
And you can do whatever it is you wanted to do. In fact, even just off of that, you could even be booked for shows, Now that the reality is, it's a historic moment.
That sounds strange.
Yeah, I know.
That you're being booked for shows.
Yeah.
Hauna video.
Lies.
I can't relate.
But ngoma zako zinaenda sana on mainstream.
Crazy.
Yeah, because as
Crazy.
long as you have the public's ear,
Yeah.
you're worth the investment,
Okay.
I think.
Okay, I guess
Yeah.
that's your first project, but I guess my next question would be, I know on your second album, you have a song called There's a God,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
I guess my question is, what's your There's a God moment? Because from your first project,
Yeah.
that was what you're singing about.
Right.
Like, was there ever a tussle for you? Hata mi nataka kuimbia madem.
Yeah.
Or was it always like, when did you have that clarity for, okay, let me sing more
Gospel.
faith-based gospel?
That's a very interesting question because, at the time, I don't know that I made the decision to do that with that much clarity. But one thing I knew was because of who I was listening to. So who am I listening to? Babyface, Boyz II Men, Jagged Edge, the typical 90s heavyweights.
Yeah.
And the common theme with all of these guys is they'd sing about love and relationships. Now, I knew I didn't have that much experience in relationships to sing heartbreak songs that would be believable and that would, can I say, compete at the same level.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah? So as a young believer, the one thing that I knew about was I had a story to tell with a faith perspective. So I thought about the idea of someone struggling in their faith, someone looking for their identity, someone trying to figure out what this Jesus thing is all about. Because I'd gotten saved pretty young. I actually gave my life to Christ in 94. So that's as far back. I was a kid. I was, I'll say it as much as that. I don't wear my age on my face. But
your genes are doing you well.
Yeah, we thank God. We thank God, But that's kind of what became the tipping there's a God moment for me. Because I knew, okay, if I will sing about relationships, I don't exactly want to sound like everyone else and how they've sounded before and what they've said before, because I'd just be regurgitating what's already out there. But based off of that, then let me sing about my faith, because the one thing that was clear was everyone's faith story or everyone's believer story is unique.
Right.
It's similar in that we believe the same God or we believe the same ideology, and we read the same Bible, we go to church. All of those are the common factors, but everyone's personal experience is different. So let me sing mine.
Right.
And I decided to sort of make it like a story, whether it's singing about a crisis of faith, or a moment of hope fulfilled, or a realization. Yeah. And I wanted it to be testimony based.
Okay.
So every time I'd be writing a song, or every time that I'd be putting out something, I wanted it to feel like I'm telling someone a story that they can see themselves in. And hopefully that can encourage them to see how whatever it is they're going through can possibly get to some place because it happened for someone else.
Yeah.
Someone else being me at this point, because I'm sharing music with them in that way. And so I didn't think that I would ever sing anything Kuimbia Madem and whatnot until that second album, which is called All I Can Say. The song you referenced, There's a God, is in that same record, which also has the first love song I ever put out. So when I was putting out a love song, I knew I can't just be singing a fictional story. I wanted some realness, and I was in a relationship at the time, so I wrote the song.
Yeah.
I wrote a love song for someone that I was actually
Right,
dating,
right.
who is now my wife, thankfully.
Okay.
So yeah,
Okay.
that's kind of how it all played out, and it has remained that way. I didn't go very far away from
Got you.
that format. Yeah.
Got you.
Yeah.
I guess another thing that usually when I meet artists who
Yeah.
are starting out, one of the main things I get is, see, we link up, like, you mentor me.
Yeah.
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 And then I usually follow that up with, like, what does that mean to you?
Yeah.
And oftentimes it's just that people don't know where to start. They feel like I have a musical gift and what do I do? It looks like you're doing it, or you
Yeah.
have a picture of it.
Yeah.
I guess for you, like, what was your? Did you have someone to hold your hand? Was it wacha tu tukazane, like whoever we meet, we go? Like, how did you piece it together so that
Yeah.
when me,
Yeah.
hearing you that early 2010, I'm like, this guy looks like he's put it together.
Yeah.
Like, for me to have that picture, what was behind the scenes for you?
It was a lot of. I think of it more like a distance mentorship.
Okay.
I referenced off of some of the folks who'd done it before, and seeing how they'd done it and how they'd sounded. That kind of guided how even I wanted my music to sound. But in terms of being with someone who'd hold my hand, I think the people who significantly contributed are the ones who are the door openers. So, for example, like Steve, he would push me to to keep working at the record until we get the sound we're trying to put out, and that's when we're recording album 1. For album 2, it was David Blackman Muthami.
Yeah.
We worked together for the most time, and there wasn't anyone else who was speaking into my ear at the time, really. But it was more of, this is what you should sound like, or this is what you should consider your album sounding like, and maybe, try to go there so you can sort of
Yeah.
find that in yourself to release. I didn't think of finding someone that I could pattern after per se. And there wasn't, to be honest, I didn't know anyone with whom I had that kind of relationship with, really. It was just, just do this thing, we see what comes out of it,
Yeah.
It's now in the later years where I'm a bit more intentional about it, because I realize it's not even just about music. There's a whole lot of other things connected. I'm seeing the intersection between the other aspects of my life and how they even feed into my creative expression.
Yeah.
That has sort of opened me to thinking about, okay, so I think the big term here is discipleship. What does that look like?
Yeah.
To be the kind of person that is honest and authentic. I'm not just singing something that I'm not living, And it's not to say that I wasn't authentic before. It's just that access wasn't there
Yeah.
before.
Yeah, I get you.
Yeah.
get you
So
completely.
I think it was just purely the drive. and because I'd been exposed to what could be and wanting it for myself, that's
Yeah.
what sort of became true north
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah.
And in many ways it still is. Just that now I think I have far better relationships maybe than I did back then. When I
Right.
say far better, I mean just more access. Not that the people are better than the ones that were
Yeah.
there before. It's important to make that distinction.
Yeah.
And also because I'm also seeking it out.
Right.
Yeah. It's not everybody who'll just come and say, yo, let me mentor you, It's really, let me see how you do this.
Right.
And then they open their lives.
Right.
Yeah, that's how I think it came
Okay.
together. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is something my audience might not know. Like, when I began music, I didn't begin by writing my own stuff. Like, I began by just happily being around other people who did.
Yeah.
Is when I met some artists that I would, sing background
Yeah.
vocals for, BGVs for. And Webi was like,
Yeah, we
I
did
think you're the
some shows.
second artist I did
Some BVs for, yeah.
BVs for.
Hopefully.
One of the things that I guess made me aware of you guys and what you guys were doing were live performances.
Right.
Like, when did live performance, at least in Nairobi, become? Because you've seen it bud from when it was just barely to like where it's flourishing to where now
Right.
there's so many shows going on. So maybe you have a better lens of
Yeah.
how you got into it and what you've seen kind of change for the good.
Yeah. I was first introduced to live performances again around the time when we're releasing the second album. So it was a group of guys who David Blackman had put together. And I got to hang out with them prior to my show. And that it sort of opened up my mind to realizing, that there's a lot that comes with that expression, that being on a stage, making music, interacting with an audience. And there were many other guys at the time, many other guys far more than I, who were doing far more than I was doing at the time, who I looked at. Dana said he had a regular show. He used to play at the August 7th Memorial a lot.
Yeah.
Back then, SK Blue, in the gospel circles, we had Kina Kanji, Aaron Rimbui, and all of these guys were doing consistent shows. It wasn't a one-off, and it was always, they were sort of like the magnets for how the live scene was budding. It was they were sort of the reference points.
Yeah.
And yes, it's been interesting to see the evolution of the live music scene in Nairobi specifically from that time to now, because what it has become is that it has become a very crucial component of the thing. In fact, almost music isn't music without having that. And so I think the one thing that I take away from seeing that I really appreciate is also the audiences that have sort of come together and appreciate this. Before, there was it was unimaginable, at least by me, to have a show where you could even charge 5K for tickets. We were coming from a time where the most expensive show was 1,500 bob, 2K, 2.5 kama umeenda sana.
That's an expensive show. Okay.
Now that we have that as it's sort of like ground zero, it can go further up and shows can actually sell out, is also a testament to how much the audiences we have appreciate music. And that's been the most beautiful thing to see if I can just zero on one thing about live performances. But also the other thing has been how hard artists work to deliver experiences. Before it was, I'm really nervous about this thing, so let me just do it and get through it. Now it's more of, I want to create an experience that people can connect with, and we can build a little movement of our own and keep scaling as we go.
Right.
I think I see that happen a lot, and it's become the bare minimum now.
Okay.
Before that was the aspiration. Now it's the bare minimum. People are now looking to compete globally, and I don't even know if I'm selling it properly by saying people are looking, because it's not something that has never happened before. We probably don't have exports sana, guys who will probably play on a stage in Nairobi and then at the Grammys.
Yeah.
But if that opportunity opened up, you can't miss people who will be able to do it. And that's the beautiful thing about it. Yeah.
For sure. Okay, looking at your musical career, you've been mainly independent, right?
Yes.
But first, before I speak about the label thing, 2015, I remember Airtel, launches this music
singing competition. Yeah, bro.
Like, take me through, like, you at this point you have like 2 albums.
Yeah.
What was the strategy behind joining a music competition? So
at this point, first of all, to be honest, I can't even say that I had the confidence for going to become vulnerable at a music competition, because that meant I was scared of being in places where you can be critiqued.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure how I would handle not winning. So when I first heard about the concept of the Airtel Trace Music Stars, the thing that encouraged me to join was it was a non-physical audition situation. And at this point, I'm also, thinking about recording new music. I'm looking for new experiences. I'm at the point where I'm like, what's next? And then this comes around. And I had time on my hands, and I thought, what can I lose? Long story short, made it into a short list.
Yeah.
And that shortlist eventually became the guys who would now go. There were about 6 of us who ended up competing for the final prize. And it was the first time I had ever been in a competition of that nature.
Yeah.
So early 2015, after having been through like a month of boot camp, we went and did the thing, and I won. And I remember you were there. What you probably don't know is, even when I had won, I didn't know I had won. Because the way people usually say at a competition, and the winner is, and they... no, what happened that year was they did second runners-up, first runners-up, and then whoever is left is the winner. And there were 3 of us on stage. The announcers called out second runners... second runners-up, first runners-up, and I was left standing. So I was still clapping like I'm waiting for them to say, and the winner is... That guy is already celebrating.
Right.
And that was a pop in my head because I had never won anything like that at home. The only time I had ever won anything that was significant to me was 6 years before at what was called the One Gospel Awards. Now, this one was a big deal because the award ceremony was in Johannesburg, and that was my first time out of Kenya.
Yeah.
And going to a foreign country, winning awards over there, I was literally the only Kenyan there at that awards show in my category, actually 3 categories. That was a very surreal experience, but I thought that was as far as it was ever going to go.
Yeah.
I didn't ever anticipate that there'd be anything happening at home. So I wasn't sure how I would feel if I tried out at home and then didn't win.
Yeah.
But then Airtel Trace came around and that happened, and it was a very interesting experience. So it sort of ushered in that thing of, whichever way it goes, either way you have the experience. You have the benefit of having had the opportunity to go through it. So
yeah. I guess my follow-up is, you've done music independently.
Yeah.
You win a national singing competition.
Yeah.
It comes with some perks.
Yeah.
Then you got signed a short while later. Is it that now you're like, okay, I have access that I didn't have as an independent artist? Is that what's going through your head? I don't want you to talk about the label specifically, but just the decision to be like, okay, I think I'm at the place where I can scale up. Is that what's going through your mind? Am I just like,
Yeah, absolutely. Because now you see the headache of figuring out how to sponsor a project is no longer is not something that you have to think about. You don't have to carry that. So it now leaves room for what can I do with what I have, what's possible at this point. So I think the thing that I got straight into was testing out new waters. So after getting signed, I worked on and eventually released an album that was very unlike what I had started with. What I had started with was very heavily R&B influenced.
Yeah.
This one was in fact, my producer at the time, RK, used to say, you need to put out something that sounds like home. Like even the people whose tongue you come from, Taita, that you can give them something that they'll say, that's our person. And it's music that sort of says, this is the identity of this. And I'd never written music that sounded like home in that way.
Yeah.
Not really, and not intentionally, to be honest. And so getting signed and now having the opportunity to create and to try out something new with the support that having a label backing you comes with, it pushed me to now try and also figure out, okay, so what else is there to me that I would probably not have discovered in different circumstances. So that's how I ended up recording a third album that sounded very different from my previous albums, and I think it was a good bet.
Yeah.
Because I don't think I ever went back to my previous setting. It was always, what else can I find in myself that I haven't tapped into before? Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but I think it's a very broad. There's a lot that happened around that time, but I think there's a level of freedom that I discovered with being in a place where now I'm not the only one striving for a win. There's other people who are invested as well. So both the ease that comes with that, the struggle, the creative struggle that comes with that, but also the definition of what do I really want as well.
Yeah.
Because again, it can become a group project and you can't really say that this is what I wanted to do. Like there's nothing that you can take out of that.
Yeah.
So I think that was a very crucial thing for me and crucial for my journey because it made that true north become very important for me. What am I trying to do? Why am I trying to do it? Who am I doing it for?
Yeah.
And if I didn't accomplish it the way I'm thinking I want to accomplish, what's one other way I can go about it?
Yeah, I get you.
Yeah, so that's, in a nutshell, that's kind of one of the things that came out of being in a space like that then.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that album was well done. It was very well done. Even engineered. Like to date, I can listen to that album and RK. I missed the RK boat, but RK. Yeah, I watched Akina Polycarp talk about their shift, and RK was also like instrumental in their shift to make home music. I think he was really passionate about that.
Yeah.
What's your highlight working on Lukundo with RK?
Oh man, I think it was the conversations, because one thing he always understood was I think the way he saw it, this is just my way of recounting it, is every artist that walks through his doors, there's a version of themselves they haven't discovered. So the first thing he would always do is make you aware of that and then push you to become that version.
Right.
So there were always these conversations that were geared towards you tapping into that version of yourself you didn't even know you have. And then the other thing that was very significant was how he always believed in simplicity. Well, he still does. I'm saying like as if he doesn't anymore. But he believes in simplicity to the point where even when you have like a song that has all these different parts and there's so much going on and you want to showcase your artistry and your prowess, he'd be like, that's wonderful. But is there a way you can be simple and still have that same thing? Yes. And then he would walk you through it, or he would create with you in such a way that that can shine through. And I think the thing that was very strong for him was he had already tried and tested this thing, and it had worked with so many other guys that he'd worked with. Like RK has a sound.
For sure.
When you hear when you hear a song, you can almost always tell RK had a hand in that.
Right.
And so the highlight was being able to sort of have that mind shift. I think that was the primary thing. But also the second thing following that up would be the relationships around it. Because there was, when we were recording Lukundo, there were all these different people that contributed to the project. And we've remained friends even up until today. Like somehow those are some of the cornerstone friendships that I still have. Whether that's, singers, session musicians, and the people that we met along the way, from the time the project was an idea to the time people could download it or listen to it somewhere. It was a highlight to become this version of myself that could have that.
For those who maybe not had the projects, Lukundo is love in Taita.
Yes,
right?
Lukundo means love.
So this was a love song album.
Yeah,
like from top to bottom. So coming from the backdrop of someone who's just been singing about their faith,
right?
Like, walk me through people's reception to hey, umetupatia album ya my love song.
I think by the time I was getting to Lukundo, I was now also asking the question of how else can I exemplify faith? One conversation I wasn't hearing much, and I thought maybe it's because I should be the one to contribute in some way to that, is the conversations about faith-based relationships.
Okay.
I mean, we've heard about love from every corner of the world, from every other artist who has their own idea of what love, whether it's a one-night stand or a two-night stand or, a fling for a couple of years. If you get tired, everybody can walk their way. I think the thing that I was looking to hear was, what does an enduring love sound like based off of a God idea of what love is supposed to look like?
Right.
So we're coming from a place where I was like, I don't have enough experience to write love songs like Boys to Men and Babyface and so on. But I'm in a relationship at this point. I'm actually married at this point. And I thought, why don't I write love songs to an actual person, but that are relatable to by anyone else in a space like mine? And they are the kind of love songs that even when our kids are grown up, at that time we only had our firstborn daughter, and she was still really, really, really young.
Yeah.
But at that time, my mind was like, if we have more kids and they are older and they listen to my music, what do I want them to hear? Or what kind of ideas do I want to pass on to them through my music that would actually be meaningful and also help them in their own journey of faith? And that was sort of the foundation of, this is what a love album would sound like with all of that working in the background. So I decided to split it into different facets. So there was the romantic aspect of it. Then there was the aspect of love in the Christian setting. I love God, God loves me. Then there was also the love of money. Then there was the love of self. But the point of the entire record was love. Right. Like, it was just these different expressions of love, and in a way that is relatable, in a way that sounded like home, and in a way that was fun. So when we're going to perform this album live, we want it to be a fun album to play.
Yeah, it sounded... Like, I think what you're saying, I've heard.
Yeah.
If you haven't heard that album,
please listen.
Please listen to that. It's a fire album. I like a lot of songs, yeah. Tusibadilike, there's just something about that song that I really like.
The rumba vibe of it. Tusibadilike is an interesting song. The idea behind that song came at a wedding. I was at a wedding. There was a couple. There's a man who got up during the reception and he was talking about his marriage. His wife was there and they'd been married for 40 years. And I remember listening to this guy and I was thinking, dude, how do you get to 40 years, And what do you need to know to stretch it out that way? When I was thinking of writing a song, now we're still in the writing phase for the Lukundo album, and we're talking about all these different facets. I thought, let's write a future album. Let me write a future love song.
You're right.
That is sort of built on, I want my marriage or my love story to sound like that guy. Tusibadilike became my hope thing. Like I'm saying, in fact, the verse goes, Tusibadilike ninavyokuombea, uzidipata heri na baraka. Like I was sort of prophesying, this is the kind of relationship I want, and this is how I want to contribute to it.
Yeah, I get you.
But I think I was giving myself this thing of, I think this is what I want to do to make it happen. This is how I want to contribute to it. So now how can I tell that story? I think it would sound nice if it is rumba, because rumba is rumored to be muziki ya wazee.
For sure. No, it sounds good.
Yeah. And then I got together with Bien. So Bien actually helped me write.
Maybe that's why I like this song. Like,
because
I like Webi, but
no, I get that.
He's like anything he touches turns to.
Yeah. He lent his songwriting prowess on to that song, and that's sort of how it came.
You see,
together.
I would never have guessed that. Like, I would never have guessed that. Okay, cool.
Yeah, and thank you, Bien, eternally. Thank you, because he helped me find a way to sort of get that story out in an African with an African flair. I think that's the best way I can put it.
Okay.
Yeah.
You spoke about you writing these songs with someone in mind. You've been married a while.
Yeah.
You have kids. All girls?
Both girls, yes.
2 girls?
Yeah.
So how has fatherhood, in particular, girl dadhood, influenced your artistry?
Significantly. In fact, I don't know if other girl dads would agree, but I think there's a special fear you get because you're raising girls. And if I can be vulnerable on essentially speaking, since we are essentially speaking, I think you think about the kind of guys they're going to interact with, and maybe you reflect on the kind of guy you are.
Kina Kevo, kina Brian.
And you get afraid about what they'll have to overcome or what kind of experiences they're going to have in relationships.
For sure.
And in a way, it becomes the tipping point. Either you're going to raise them now with fear in the backdrop, or you just give them a perspective that is broad of the kind of world they're growing in. And that becomes where the toughness sets in, because you're raising them as a dude. I mean, it's all you can be, but they're going to live in that world as women.
Yeah.
And I think the one thing that I've appreciated the most is the soundness of the wisdom that my wife carries. Mm-hmm. And she's helped me make sense of a lot of things from a girl perspective, so that I can be able to relate with them the way I should, not the way I think. Because again, the way I think might actually be irrelevant to what experiences they may have. The one thing that has also done for me is it has softened me a lot. So softened me up a lot.
Yeah.
Because the way girls receive love is very different from the way boys do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they all receive love, that's true, but they receive love based on who they are and how the setup that they grow up in. And I think it has given me motivation. Mm-hmm. What kind of dad do I want to be? Because with girls, they'll marry someone who is very similar to the example of a man that they had in the house.
Yeah.
For those who are privileged to grow up with their dads, because we recognize that there are also settings where, they'll sort of have to have extended father figures because the dad wasn't there. Mm-hmm. First of all, I wanted to make sure I want to be there throughout.
Yeah. And
I want to make sure that my marriage is a reflection of what it looks like to be in a relationship that works, that is honest. It's not perfect, but it works, and it's a good reference point. So being a girl dad it's tough, because there's a version of myself I had to become to raise girls.
Right. I get you. I get you.
I think that's the easiest way I can describe it.
I get you.
But it's also been a very rewarding experience, because I guess it just broadens how you see life. We're raising children to grow up in a world that we haven't lived in yet. We've only had the experiences we grew up with, and to the point where we are as adults, and the responsibilities that adulthood brings. But we really don't know what they're going to be fighting with at the beginning. I mean, in the future, not the beginning, the future. And so the one thing that I keep thinking about is, what's the kind of foundation what's their home? What's the thing that will always come back to when they're dealing with new experiences or when they face problems they never imagined they'll be dealing with? And I think that's where the fear comes in, because you don't know. You only know, well, this is what I've experienced growing up. In case you face this, then this is what you could possibly do, But then again, I've also come to realize that sometimes I think we complicate things when we become afraid. And the only thing that really matters is to spend time with them, to be there with them, and have an open line of communication. And what I mean by that is, I want it to be that even when they're trying to process through life experiences, they can come and talk to me, that I'm the voice they trust. And I think that has become the thing that is most important to me at the end of the day, because then at least we have relationship in that way. Yeah.
I get you.
Yeah.
And maybe one more, since you're in family.
Right.
I think our generation now is very skeptical about marriage, about many things. I think now marriage is maybe not held in the regard it was. And I think part of it is healthy, that people realize how heavy of a commitment it is.
Right.
And even I can appreciate reluctance. Like, I can really appreciate that.
Right.
But maybe from someone who's been in it, how long have you been?
Married years 14 this year.
14?
Yeah.
Dang, bro.
So married years 14, but we've been together collectively for...
Don't even say no.
Yeah.
I'm talking to the right person. And this is like this. Let me just let you cook, bro. Like,
Right.
Let me even sit up. So 14 years. I know in 14 years, it's not all been rosy.
Right.
So give me language on how to navigate when things are thick.
The first thing that I've experienced, because, 14 years is, in some people's eyes, a very short time, but it's also a significant. You've raised kids, they've got double-digit age, but the one thing that I've come to realize is difficulty in marriage is part of the package. That will always be there.
Okay.
If it wasn't, you all are pretending. And or one of you is irrelevant.
One or the other.
Yeah. But the thing that makes it, let me use this word operatively, so don't take it literally. What I've found is makes it easier to deal through the complexity of marriage is communication. Now, it's easy for someone to say communication, and you think it's people being able to talk.
Passing information.
But communication has
layers.
It has components. There's how you say things, there's how the other person hears, and then there's how they'll understand or interpret the information that they've received. And it goes both ways.
Right.
One of the things we're constantly learning and relearning, and we've made significant progress in, I can say, because, of course, we're dealing with evolved situations in our marriage, my wife and I, is you learn how to communicate in a language that works for the two of you, because both of you have personalities, you have tendencies, you have preferences, you have backgrounds, and those backgrounds are the foundation of who each one of you is.
Yeah.
And how communication used to work for you growing up to becoming an adult is pretty much how you'll approach communicating with anyone, at any space, in any space. So communication makes it easier because it gives you an insight. It gives you insight into the things you won't see, things that are not obvious. So, for example, one of the most contentious things, one of the things I've heard about why marriages fail is, money is a problem.
Yeah. Divorce lawyers say in Kenya, finance is the number one reason people separate.
I would not dispute that, but I would go a step further and say people are the reason why divorce happens.
For sure. We have to blame it on someone. So let's say finance.
Yeah. But the reason why finances are so contentious is because when you look at it, everyone is coming in with their own preset of how what the significance money holds in someone's life is. And they tend to expect, there's always this unspoken but very real expectation that your partner sort of sees things that way as well. And what ends up happening is both of you have all these warring priorities, and then your communication is already terrible at this point.
Yeah.
So you find this person is doing one thing that is not necessarily bad.
Yeah.
It's not even that because they are spendthrifts or anything. It's just that they have a different set of priorities from yours, and there's no shared information, there's no shared understanding. And it doesn't necessarily start off as a problem, it just becomes a problem over time. So by the time things are breaking apart, you'll find that the mess you have to sort out in that space is years worth of unspoken things, unexpressed feelings, expectations that were never discussed and agreed on. So you find that for most of these contentious things, whether it is finances or in-laws or even just your approach for raising kids, because that's another thing that cosanishas people a lot, is this is how I was raised, so this is how we're going to do things. And your spouse is like, actually, no, we have a very different setting, and so this is, and then guys can't agree.
Right.
The reason why you have those contentious things and how they become a problem is that there's literally no open channel. So people can't figure out what are we going to create for ourselves that works for us. The inception point for having good communication is during the dating phase.
Yeah.
Because that's the place where now guys decide if this is the person they want to spend their lives with, and if they agree on the fundamentals. So if that didn't happen at that inception place, and then now guys find themselves in the marriage.
Yeah.
And then, now it's like you've already crossed that bridge. It's very difficult to come out. Not impossible, just really difficult and really painful. The fallout is far worse. So I think the one thing that I have benefited from the lessons of, also because you've had some challenges that threatened to split the marriage, is how important it is to have communication, more specifically, effective communication, and that built on the foundation of we're a team, we're on the same side. At the end of the day, we want the same thing.
Right.
Until that's the shared thought, the shared feeling, you'll find there's competition in the marriage, which is really pointless, because why marry someone you're going to compete with? Until there's value for being able to be on the same page, whatever life throws at you, you're almost always going to fail.
Yeah.
You quickly discover in marriage that love is not enough to keep the thing going. I mean, it's definitely, in a sense, it's like you could call it the glue. You love this person, which is why you want to invest your life with them,
Yeah.
But how you do that is in the everyday practice. So love is not really a feeling. It's a sacrifice. It's a choice.
Mic drop, man. Dang.
Yeah. That's what I've found.
That was for me. That question was for me.
Yeah, okay.
But I think what you're saying is not even. I think all relationships require a level of communication that is difficult for humans to get to because we get lazy at some point. So when people say do the work.
Yeah, do the work.
I think it's what you're saying. It's dirty work, but
the motivation is that on the end of doing the work is you have a wholesome marriage. And it does, let me say this operatively also, it gets easier because you build a rhythm.
Yeah.
And the thing about rhythms is at the beginning they're hard because they're new.
Yeah.
It's not even that they're hard, they're just unfamiliar. But once you get into the cycle of doing things, it becomes your new norm.
Yeah.
And somehow everything that comes out of marriage is built on top of that. And that's kind of what we're finding out now. And we're realizing how important it is to discover that earlier, because again, there's some pains it saves you.
Yeah.
Now, even if you've learned that late, I think at the end of the day, the most important thing is that you've learned it.
Right.
So it's just to value the ability or to value the importance of being able to just talk every day. Even if it's just talking about, I these days I find myself liking 1, 2, 3 things. It can be as basic as that.
Right.
But what's coming out of that is the intimacy.
I like that.
I
like that. I think even intimacy, sometimes we just think of it as physical intimacy.
Yeah. Physical is a result. It's not the thing.
Exactly.
The physical aspect
from
is
an overflow of
absolutely
intimacy elsewhere.
Yeah.
I like that, man. Buy his book, bro. But let me jump back to the music. I think you have, if I'm not wrong, 3 albums, 2 EPs,
It's
a gang of singles. The question I want to ask is, what keeps you in this music thing 20 years in?
That's a good question. First, even how is it that I was able to continue it? Coming from Lukundo, there were a few singles in between that and the EP, Let the Light In. I was starting to sort of play around with the idea of being able to own the process, the production, the creative process.
Yeah.
Because it was beginning to get difficult to keep making music, and I really wanted to, but it was too expensive. So I think that struggle made me start thinking outside the box. And really, for me, that was, what does it look like for me to learn how to produce a song? 2020, the whole world shut down. We couldn't even go into a studio. So now that became cemented as, you know what, figure this thing out, learn as much about it as you can, because this might be the way you keep making music going forward. That sort of became the new thing that I incorporated into my music journey, and it became a cornerstone for how I keep creating. And I've grown a lot. I've grown a lot along the way. That has sort of evolved to now, to the point where I now have producer credits on everything I'm putting out, which is exceptional. It's exciting for me to have that going on. But why do I create music? The number one answer to that is because I must. You know, I must. I just must. Because even you, Noel, the way you've been made, the way you've been set up, there are things that you have to do because you are made to do those things.
Yeah.
Whether they make you money or not, the fact is, at the end of the day, it's like you've been given this resource. There's this investment that's been put in you, and it just has to come out. It has to multiply. So whether you choose to do it large scale or you choose to do it as a hobby, the thing is, it must come out.
Yeah.
It became clear to me that because I must do it, then I must do it. But then now, even more importantly, in addition to, you know, in addition to it being a crucial thing to keep doing, is what am I attaching it to?
Yeah.
So in a sense, the theme of it being faith-based and inspirational and practical, a practical exemplification of what faith looks like, you know, in the world we live in today, that's been my foundation.
Right.
Because again, I'm a very different believer from when I first did Outside My Window.
Yeah.
And along the way, there's been so much that's been added on to my journey. There are experiences that have happened. In fact, I think I was even telling you this a few days ago. We were together at a show. Songs don't come to me because I don't put out songs because I keep writing every day and I'm honing the skill. In fact, for me, what happens personally is I have experiences.
Yeah.
And whenever I have these experiences, there's always the context. There's always a spiritual context to these experiences. In other words, I see the God in the moment, and that becomes the song, you know?
Yeah.
So whether it's you're singing a song about trusting God, you actually have an experience where you've had to trust God,
Right.
and it was a difficult process, it was whatever it was, but it becomes contextual. So you're singing something that's real. At whatever point I'm putting out a song, it's because I'm seeing myself also as a custodian. Because what I'm also experiencing is, like there's a particular song, it's called New Day. New Day has probably been one of the most successful singles I've had as an independent single, because this one also now crossed over into mainstream. There are guys who are playing it that I never even submitted it to, which I'm really grateful for. But the one thing that I've consistently heard back from people who've listened to that song is, this song got me through a tough time. This song got me through a really difficult season, or there's even one person who came and said that they were about to commit suicide. And they stumbled on the song on YouTube and they changed their decision. Of course, I'm respecting that they were going through a very difficult season, and I don't think that a song is enough to make someone change their mind, but it started the process that led to that decision.
For sure.
And that's what this person came and told me. So in a sense, it's like I'm also being given the opportunity to see what the consequence of me making music is,
Right.
to keep me going. So even in the moments when I don't think this music is going anywhere, or people are not listening, and I don't see the immediate result or the benefit, but that's sort of been the backdrop against which there has to be an overarching reason for why the music keeps getting made. And that's for me. It doesn't have to be the same for everyone else, but that's what I think I'm sort of seeing in context, in practice, in continuity.
Okay. Speaking of making music, he dropped a new EP. It's called Remind Me.
Absolutely.
What is Remind Me? I usually like asking people what their titles, where their titles come from.
Yeah.
4-song EP.
It's a 4-song EP.
Why Remind Me? What's
First, the title Remind Me has two meanings. The way I put it, the way I conceptualized it, I wanted it to have two meanings. Even the way it's written, it's like two words put together, remind me. So the first context is remind, out of remembrance, like to think back on. Yeah. But the other one is transformation, rewire my mind. And
double entendre bars?
Yeah. And really, it was coming out of it was actually coming out of a faith crisis. As I was writing this record, the process of putting this thing together, both producing it, writing it, producing it, and then it being something that people can appreciate, was I was going into this season where I was starting to ask God, whether he's really there, because I was facing some difficulties that seemed like they'd just never end, I'm at a place where I'm trying to get past a moment and it's not happening the way I want it to happen. And I found myself in this faith crisis where I'd even pray and it feels like God is not hearing me. But then the longer I stayed in a place where I'm seeking God and I'm trying to figure out, okay, so what's next for me? And should I even continue doing this thing? The one response that I kept getting back, now it was more of an impression. I'm not going to belabor that, but really what it is in summary is it was more of an impression, is remember how you got here. Remember the experiences you've had along the way that have even shaped your faith.
Yeah.
Remember the people that came into your life and what they all came to contribute. Remember the difficulties that seemed impregnable and the fact that you got through them. You're still here. They are not,
Right.
Remember God's goodness. Remember that it's okay for you to break down at some moments because you're a human being, and that has all been factored into God's plan for your life. There are those days when the truth of the matter is you'll be mad at him because he's not doing what you want, but really because he wants to show you that his plan for you is better or it's different. And it started making sense that way. And the interesting thing, this EP had a few firsts for me. Number one, the title came before the songs. Because this is all coming out of a place where I've been contemplating a lot, thinking a lot. And then I remember writing in my notes one time, the next album, in fact, in my mind, it was going to be an album. My next album is going to be called Remind Me, because I found myself reflecting a lot because of the impression. So the first track on the EP is actually a prayer. And it sets the stage for the songs that come after, because it's really me saying, in the days when I forget that, let me put it this way, the days that I forget you're there, remind me.
Right.
And so, the titles of the songs form two phrases. Because the songs are called The Journey of Life, that's the track number one, which is a prayer, spoken word-ish. The second song is called You Won't Change. The third is called Remind Me. And the last one is called For My Good. So when you put that in a sentence, it would be like, in the journey of life, you won't change. Remind me for my good.
That's good. That's good. This guy's deep, man. And deep people always have to have podcasts. So my last question is, you started a podcast. What is it in your growth and faith journey that said, hey, outside of just my recorded music, I want to encourage people. I want to do this in this format at this time. Why did you put it together? And tell them where they can hear it.
First, it's everywhere podcasts can be streamed. So Spotify, Apple Music, it's available there. But this podcast was born July 2020. I remember because I remember thinking to myself how every time I get around people, whether it's friends or even people I meet, the one thing that constantly happens is I end up finding ways to encourage them. And in some way, that's how encouragement comes back to me. So we can start a conversation at a very random place, but then it ends up becoming about some life experience and how you're going to make it. Or, even me, I was here before, then they share their experience. It just becomes this whole, moving parts of experiences and how they correlate to faith. I just realized that I wanted to be able to create a repository of encouragement that even I would go back to. So, I was saying this before the tape started rolling. That it is a digital diary that I just make available for everyone to read into. So, again, being the fact that it was born in the middle of our pandemic, I had time. And I had been trying to figure out how to improve my capacity to record music. And I thought, if I have the equipment, I might as well also just extend it to recording, whether it's messages or just reflections or just anything that people can appreciate and have it available for them to listen to. So the whole essence of Soulfire Inspiration is really just to share encouragement because we all need it along the way of life. So a lot of that, of course, comes from scripture, but the idea is that it is applicable. So yes, it's scripture. I'm not preaching at you. I'm actually even learning alongside you because I'm saying, hey, this is what I was thinking about John chapter 2.
Right.
And I share what revelation I got out of it or what experience I've had in life that sort of correlates to scripture. Yeah, it's not a theology class.
Yeah.
It's not even a philosophical debate. It's really just, hey, this is where it's at. And anyone can plug in and even share their experiences, whether it's via feedback or even saying how whatever I've shared has been an experience for them in their lives.
Right.
Yeah, so.
Man, I want to encourage everyone who supports me
Yeah.
to support his new EP, Remind Me.
Yeah.
And while you're at it, check out his discography. Let the Light In is a really dope EP.
Yeah.
And if you're looking for some Rumba love songs, check
Yeah.
out Lukundo, a dope album.
Yeah.
And check out the pod as well.
Right.
I think it's really hard for me to compress, all the time you've put together into an hour of talking.
Yeah.
So I've tried to just draw out the gems, but there's so much to unpack.
Yeah.
But maybe you can invite me on your pod.
Yeah, we can talk.
Then I can turn it into another interview there. But thank you for everyone who has joined in today and whenever you'll hear this. Please check out Webi. Tell them what your handles are.
On Twitter, it's at Webi_. Webi is WEBI. On Instagram, it's Webi Music, WEBI Music, one word. Same thing for Facebook. Yeah.
And Webi is your real name?
It is, actually. I have two names, Benjamin Webi. I was only given two government names.
That's such a cool name. I always thought it was a stage name, like Webi.
That's exactly why I made it a stage name, because
like
it sounds
Webi.
unusual.
We don't have the luxury of one name.
Yeah.
I really admire artists who have one name.
One name, just like that.
Ati.
Because you have to go with Noel Nderitu.
Bro, if you Google Noel, I'll be result number 77,002.
This is true, because it's so
I have
many.
to put in my last name so that I can be the top one.
Right. Thanks to
In
the
my next
parents.
life, I will try.
Yeah.
But I'll see you when I see you. This is Essentially Speaking. Please remember to like, share, or subscribe. This is not for my ego. It is for the algorithm to recommend it to people like you who would enjoy it. See you on the next one.
Skis are flow in a conversation, essentially speaking.